Hello, hello. It is October 19th, 2024. Back from the chess club. We had a small little study sesh after we got some food after the chess games, and that was kind of fun. We just went through a Yusupov book, like Chess Fundamentals or something. It was like an orange book, and just showing off some mating motifs, and we tried doing the exercises just together, and then we went through like the examples together and then did the exercises on our own, and yeah, that was kind of cool. So we got 6 games today, so hopefully I won't make this another 1-hour banger, but such is life. I did start the day playing some other person whose name is escaping my mind, a new guy. I don't think he's playing the chess league, but yeah, I lost to him like twice. He said he was like, at his peak, he said he was like 2,000 on chess.com or something, so it was pretty good. But anyway, let's get straight into the games here. So game number 1, I'm playing against Emmanuel. We have played many times. In the most recent set of 2 games we played, I think I won both games, so I'm going into this one pretty confident. I'm continuing to play my new openings, so I'm starting with d4, and this is probably the same way he opened last time. So d4, d5, knight f3, knight c6, g3, d6, bishop g2, knight f6, castle, bishop d6, now c4. So you can see I'm going into a Catalan. The structure that he has is the 2 knights are out and the bishop is on d6. I know in some structures you do want to go knight c3, knight f d2, queen c2, and then push e4, just because you'll get tempo on this guy, on the bishop here. But I think it's a little different because in those structures the pawn's on c6, so maybe it doesn't exactly work here. But he takes on c4, and I play queen c2. Pretty common Catalan move, just trying to win back the pawn, but also getting tempo by getting some more development first. a6, I assume he wanted b5, but I stopped it with a4 right away. Computer says I didn't even have to do that, which is interesting, because I figured he would just, like, if, let's say, knight bd2, that's not knight bd2, knight bd2, b5, oh, he wants b3. Interesting. And it's like you can't really guard this pawn anymore. Okay, that's interesting. I need to study this opening a little more, as you'll see later. But yeah, I played rook d1 just because I felt like the d4 pawn was going to be weak. He castles. I take the pawn on c4. He plays b5. Trade rooks, and I win the pawn. So I'm up a pawn. But my pieces are a little awkward here. Like, I haven't moved my knight here or my bishop here, so I need to like really get these into the game before he starts getting some counterplay. He starts with knight d4, and when I saw this move, I had a feeling that it didn't work. After I calculated, of course, I can. Well, this is what I did in the game anyway. So I figured, once my knight moves, the bishop sees the queen, and because of that I can take on d4. So now we're both seeing each other's queens, and if he takes here, I was going to take here, and if you're going to try to save your bishop, I'm going to save my bishop, right? So it kind of works out in an even trade, except, well, I started with taking his knight, so obviously I'm up a knight. But as you see, after I take on d4, he tries to trade the queen off for the bishop before taking my queen, but I'm just up a piece at this point. Since I started with him, everything started with him moving his knight and me taking it first. So unfortunately, the tactic didn't work for him, and now I'm just up a piece. He goes for h6, and I decide to trade off the bishop, win an extra pawn. He plays rook c8, and from here it's just cleanup. I'm just trying to organize all my pieces and, get my bishop and knight developed, because they haven't moved in 20 moves of this game. So, so knight e4, good move, trying to win the bishop. I have to part ways with one of the pawns, so I play bishop f3. So he does take rook e2, and unfortunately for him, I have a king fork, which is like the rarest of forks. Like, I'm forking the knight and the rook with my king, which is just bizarre. And there's no way to move the knight to defend the rook. There's no way to move the rook to defend the knight, right? I mean, like, yeah, you can do this, but that's not really helping you. And obviously this doesn't work, so yeah, he has no way to really defend either piece by moving the other one. So he plays rook e1, take a knight. I'm down for a fair trade, because I am up a full bishop, and I have a passed b pawn, which is going to be a big liability. So, as everyone knows, passed pawns are meant to be pushed, so I'm trying to work on pushing the b pawn. Cut the king off on the 7th rank. He gives a check, and that's fine. And yeah, he's trying to get counterplay with his 4-on-3 here, but I have an extra bishop, so it's really hard to make stuff happen. I played rook h7 here. The pawn is still defended, so everything's fine there. E5, again, he's trying to push his pawns, but it probably just won't work. B7, he tries to stop the promotion. Obviously, I can't promote right now because of the rook, but if I defend the square, then it's fine. So bishop a7 gives me a check, fall back. Rook b3 doesn't really stop the promotion, so I promote, trade off his rook, and he's trying to continue pushing his pawns, but as you'll see here, it's just cleaning up all the pawns. I don't even need to clean up all the pawns, but, it's just easier if I do. So yeah, as I see here, I give this check to the king, and depending on which way the king goes, I'm going to try to cut him off and just like let one of my pawns promote. So if he went here, I was thinking of just going like here, and we could shuffle back and forth, but eventually I was going to just be able to push one of these pawns. So king h5, f4. I thought I stalemated him for a second, but it turns out he still has he still has king h6, so king h6, f5, and just slowly push the pawn, and mate on g7. So overall, actually not even the clean game for me. Like, the opening didn't actually work as I thought it did, or it didn't work as well as I thought it would. So, clearly I still need to look at this opening and figure out like where I'm going wrong, because it feels like I'm making natural moves, but yet I'm just in like not as good positions, like around here. You'll see this more clearly in the next game I play against the next player, but yeah, you can see here, like, I have like a 0.7 advantage that just goes straight to zeros. So clearly some work to be done with this Catalan here. All right, going into game 2, we have the black pieces against Emmanuel again. So d4, knight f6. And here he plays c4, which means I get to unveil the knight's tango. I've been having second thoughts about this opening, just because in the event they don't play c4 on the second move, I kind of have to figure out what to do against knight f3, knight c6, e4 even. And my original plan was just go into a King's Indian, but then I have to learn a King's Indian, which is not exactly the easiest thing to do. I've been winging it, but I don't really like to wing the openings like this, so I might need to reconsider this knight f6 opening and figure out another way to kind of play this. So we'll see what happens, but he does play c4, so I get to play the tango. He plays e3, which is not one of the 3 critical moves in the opening, so I just went with e5, trying to break the center. He plays d5, And now we kind of transpose into like a weird version where he tried playing knight c3 but didn't, if that makes any sense. D5 is a very common but not so good move in the Knights Tango, where you're just trying to gain space and kick the knights around, but that's totally fine. Knight e7, knight f3, knight g6, defending the pawn here. I saw I had maybe e4, but something about this didn't feel right, so I just stuck with knight g6. He plays bishop d2 afterwards, and that kind of hampers my next plan, which is to trade off the bishops for either his knights or his bishops. So, I mean, trade off, really. Because positions in the tango tend to get very closed and, like, tight, you do want to trade off the bishops, right? You don't usually have open lines like that in the tango, so I would have liked to seen a knight on c3 instead, just so that I can trade my bishop off for it, but he plays bishop d2. Because of that, I wanted to try to force a knight onto d2. Of course, he could take with the queen, but if he takes with the queen, I feel like it's a bit of a waste of time. Taking with like this knight, for example, just makes so much more sense if I do trade here, because you develop a piece while also trading off and like my knight. I guess I'm doing the trading, but you know, he loses his bishop into what's going to be a closed position, which is fine for the person losing the bishop or trading off the bishop for a knight. So then he plays queen c2, which I didn't understand why he played this move. Like, yeah, it attacks my knight, but you could also attack my knight with bishop d3. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure what he was trying to go for here. I did end up taking his bishop, which is not quite as favorable for me in a closed position, but I figured he's probably going to put a knight on d2, so I can trade it off with bishop b4. A3, like further enforcing the idea of having me trade off bishop for knight. He takes back with the knight, which is fine. You know, I don't really care which one he takes with, but I'm going to play d6 and castle. So now the question becomes what to do with my light squared bishop. Obviously, this position is going to get very closed, so I got to figure out what I can do here. He does castle. I play a4 to try to gain some queenside space. He plays bishop f3. Not exactly sure what his plan was there. But I play bishop c7 just so that I can like later connect my rooks. You know, this bishop doesn't really have many squares. It's not going to go this way into staring into pawns. So, you know, we'll figure out what to do with that later. Rook c8, just fine. I play b6. I figured he wanted to play rook c8 to try to push c5. So I played b6 just to stop c5. He moves his bishop back to e2, so I know he's not really sure what to do with his bishop there. At least that's what I thought he was thinking. I'm not really sure. I played f5. I decided to kind of just gain space. I felt like this was a really committal move because, you know, usually pushing your f-pawn is not advised unless you're going for like some kind of kingside attack. Since he hasn't played e4, I don't really have a chance to play f4, but I figured I might as well just put this pawn here. It's well defended. You know, the bishop and the rook defend it well. Obviously, the queen's not going to take it yet. And it's not so simple for him to attack the pawn there. So maybe he'll push e4 and then I can push f4 and we'll get a King's Indian-ish position. But he pushes f4, to which I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I kind of wanted him to take me because he would be left with this backwards pawn here. I can always retake with the knight instead of taking with the pawn. But I started with queen e7, just trying to connect my rooks. I figured the e-file was going to open one way or another, so, you know, just getting my rook onto it early would be good. Here, he plays bishop d3. The f-pawn, my f-pawn is well defended, so I'm not really concerned. And here, I missed a good move, e takes f4, and I'll miss this move in the next few moves, as you'll see. Which, you know, I mean, I saw the idea, but I didn't quite understand why it would be so good. You know, like e4 apparently it's the best move, but this just doesn't feel right to me. Rook e8. Can you take here? Queen e3. Ooh, excuse me. But yeah, you know, you'll see over the next few moves here, I keep missing e takes f4. The computer wants me to play it a lot, so I never actually do play it, at least not for a while, because I figured, you know, I want him to take me, and I want to move my knight to d4 or e5, for example, just to have my knight better placed. That was really the main reason I never took on f4, because I wanted to play knight takes e5. But alas, he never takes. He does trade on a5, which I was just like, okay, sure, I guess. Doesn't really affect my position all too much. Admittedly, the b file does open, so maybe that's a concern, but I thought it'd be fine. He plays a6, or sorry, a4. Wow, my coordinates are off. He plays a4, which, I mean, I guess it stops my a pawn from pushing, but it's not like I'm promoting that pawn anytime soon. So, yeah, I kind of just left it alone. I do finally decide to take on f4. Again, I don't really remember why. I just never really liked taking, because I am getting the open file now. Admittedly, my queen's in the lead of the, you know, air quotes around attack, which could be problematic if a rook lands on e1, which it totally could. But, you know, it might still be fine. Here I spot a tactic that doesn't really work as well as I thought it would, but I thought it was kind of cute. So bishop takes a4. And if the queen takes, I have queen e3 check to win back the bishop. And I've just won a pawn from there. So I figured, okay, that sounds fine. So that's exactly what happens. And then he played a really weird move that I just knew could not be correct. And it was knight b3. Now, computer obviously agrees. And the reason I thought this wasn't good was because you're moving pieces away from your king. And I have this open file and a knight that can very easily start creating a lot of problems on your king. So I started with knight h4, trying to go for some kind of like sneaky, not that sneaky, but for some like queen e4 nonsense. But apparently this wasn't the way to go. I had to start with rook e2, which makes a lot more sense, right? You're controlling the second rank, which is obviously a really good thing to do. You know, there's the common saying of like rooks on the 7th. So I should have started with this, but I saw knight h4. He takes my pawn, which I just like further reinforced the idea that, you know, your pieces are moving away from your king, and I have pieces that can come in and attack your king, like that, for example. So I knew I should have an attack somewhere here. Now I play rook e2, and it's about as good as it was before, so that's good for me. But now white's in a lot of trouble because this knight is offside. It's not really doing anything here. You can try to win my pawns, but I don't care because I'm going to have a big attack on your king. Admittedly, this d pawn could be a little scary if it does get become a passed pawn, but I figured my attack should come way before he can win all my pawns. So he tries to start with rook cd8, but I mean, there's mate in 4 here, and I didn't see mate in 4. Well, I didn't see mate in 4, but I knew the attack on the g2 pawn was just going to be too much. Around here, I realized this should just be mate. There's not really a good way to defend your king here. Rook g1. There's 2 other moves, rook f2 and rook f3, that try to stall the game out, but this is all actually mate in 3 anyway. He starts with rook g1, but yeah, so this is just mate in 3 now. So take on g2. And obviously not obviously, but the threat now is this discovered check, to which I could like win a queen, or I can like double up my queen and rook to barrel down onto the 8th rank here, or the 1st rank. But yeah, so rook g2. He tries to play rook d1 or rook e1 to rook d e1 to kind of try to counterattack the queen here. But obviously that's not going to work because I'm just going to take. Even if this wasn't mate, I could always just take here and win the other one. But yeah, I start with rook e2 instead, and it's mate on the next move. Only move is rook g2, so this becomes mate because the rook here is pinned to. The rook's pinned because of my queen. Yeah, so this game was definitely cleaner than the last one. Apparently rook g1 is also mate. But anyway. Yeah, so the nice tango coming in pretty cool. It's an opening that is just fun, but like I said, they have to play c4 on the second move, and if they don't, I have to move into like a King's Indian, which I don't know how I feel about yet. But yeah, like I feel like he kind of strategically misplayed this middle game here, bringing pieces over to the queen side. Like if he wanted to win the idea wasn't to win his pawn with this move, is to get the knight out of danger, but there are better ways to do that. Queen a5 actually wins the pawn and defends the knight, so it does 2 in 1, and now I don't really quite have an attack because you have like knight f3 to try to defend everything here. Yeah, so kind of a misplay bringing the pieces over there. Just give me a free attack. So okay, so the third game I played today was against Swain. I had the black pieces, and something really funny happens later in this game, which I'll try to show you video footage of if I remember. So I have black, and we go d4 knight f6. Like I wanted to play a tango again, but I forgot he plays knight f3 on move 2, like against knight f6, because we actually did play last time we met, which I think was Tuesday. And yeah, so he plays knight f3. I just forgot. So, I kind of should have known from the start that I can't actually go into a tango here. So I'll have to figure something out with that. He plays bishop f4, so this is kind of like a London. Bishop g7, e3. Actually, no, this is actually just basically a London. Except he never played c3, and he put his bishop on c4 instead of the usual d3. Either way, I don't really, my first couple of moves are all basically the same. I'm eventually going to put a knight on d7, and I can expand on the queen side when the bishop lands on c4 just because it gains tempo. But then he moves his bishop to a2. Now, I remember that he does play like this. Like, he likes to put his bishop on this weird pocket here. I don't know what to do about that, to be honest, but, maybe we'll find something out if I analyze the games a little more. But I just continue with normal development. Knight bd7, knight bd2. I take space on the queen side with b5. He counterattacks with c5, or c4, which is a good move, I think. Bishop b7, kind of just leaving the tension on the pawns. Like, I'm not really gonna do this. This just doesn't seem right. So, bishop b7, queen c2. I thought he was going to try to castle queenside for a second. But at the same time, you've moved all of these pawns here. So, castling queenside sounds a little sketchy. But at any rate, I play rook e8, which apparently the computer doesn't like, but whatever. b4, trying to gain space, is what I assumed the idea with that move was. But I counterattack on the center with e5. He takes, I take. Bishop g3, and then I push e4. So now I've got this nice little thorn in his position. It's protected by my knight and the bishop. So it's a little annoying for him to deal with. And hopefully I can exploit this well, but we'll see. He plays knight d4 just to get his knight out of the way of my pawn, of course. I played rook c8 just because I figured the c file might open up. Also, it doesn't really do much on a8 anyway, so develop the rook. And then he plays c5 here, which I can't really deal with that pawn, actually. It's actually surprising how strong the c pawn is. Right? I can't move my bishop anywhere unless I want to trade it, which maybe I should have, but I didn't think it was right for some reason. So boom, bam, blam. I played knight e5, trying to put my knight on d3, and I thought maybe my knight's really good there. But he plays c6, which I thought was like a really bad move for me because my bishop is just like stuck in the corner, not able to see onto the board. But before I move my bishop, I played knight d3 check, king e2. I thought his king was a little exposed, but on the other hand, the board isn't terribly open, so it's kind of hard to punish the king being in the center. Now I finally move my bishop out of the way, but then he takes on e4 here. I take back, and he takes my the knight that was outposted on d3. And here, I don't know how I thought this was possible, but I tried to play knight takes c6, but that's not how knights move. So for some reason, I just played it thinking that's how the knight moves, and then the game just kept going. Like, neither of us noticed I just did that. But yeah, so let's fast forward a few moves here. Neither of us noticed that I just made an illegal move, and he played king f1. So this game already just feels illegitimate, and I kind of feel weird about it, just because like I shouldn't really be making illegal moves like that. I don't know how that happened, but here we are, I guess. Yeah, what to say, right? So after he played king f1, I continue with knight d4. We trade on d4, we trade on d4. So, like, I'm technically winning, but, you know, I had that one super move of mine. Rook d4, trying to attack my bishop. I play c5 to defend it. He can take b takes c5, which is what he does, but I can also just take it with the bishop, which, you know, it's just a pawn trade and gets out of the way of his rook. Rook d7, trying to infiltrate, but I threaten a rook trade with rook e7, right? Protected by my bishop here. And now I win another pawn after he moves his rook to d3, so he can't actually take here because it'd be mate. Right, you can't run this way because of my rook. He does see it, so he plays bishop f4 instead, covering the c1 square. So now I have to move my bishop out of the way, so I played bishop b4. Again, threatening a mate in 1 with rook e1 now. Rook d1 to defend mate. And then here I double up my rooks, trying to like brute force this issue here, but he smartly blocks with bishop b3 here. And here we just start shuffling. I win a pawn, come out here, and he plays rook g4. I should mention at this point, we both have like under a minute on the clock, and there's no increment, so we both need to play a lot faster now. I push a5 just to defend my bishop. I saw there's like this potential x right here, and even though my rooks are defending this bishop, maybe something's going to happen. So let me just defend the other one, and it'll be fine. He plays rook d4, bishop f5, rook f4. I attack his other rook. He moves out of the way, but that lets me trade bishops here, win another pawn. And after he plays king f2, I try to threaten a rook trade. He declines. And here I just move back, trying to figure out what to do. And here he's just shuffling because he has like 3 seconds left. But for some reason, I'm still taking my time well, not too much time, but like I'm taking enough time to the point where I actually just flag here. So like I realized I ran out of time as I was picking up my rook to go to e2, which isn't even good, but yeah, no, I just for some reason I just didn't move quickly when I had no time, and I just lost on time. And maybe I wasn't meant to win this game anyway after making that stupid knight on e4 takes on c6 move. So I feel less bad for losing now that I've seen that happened, but yeah, I don't know. It just felt weird. All right, so we have a new player here in the club. I believe his name is Jackson, and I believe the pronunciation up there is correct, or spelling, not pronunciation. I believe the spelling is that, but if I do find out what it is for sure, then I'll fix that next time. But for now, new player. I don't really know much about him, so we go into a game here. I have black again. Just because I didn't rotate the board to put the letters in the coordinates correctly. But I just took black, so whatever. So he starts e4. I go with a Sicilian. Knight f3, knight c6. And now we have bishop c4. So this is kind of like a weird Bowdler attack. I like to mentally call it a delayed Bowdler, where normal in the Bowdler, or whatever you call it, you just go bishop c4 on the second move. I call this a delayed one because you played knight f3, knight c6 first. But anyway, I know against the bishop landing on c4, you want to try to push your pawns to kick this bishop around and make it dumb. So e6 is the main move. Knight f3 or knight c3 is one of the better ways to defend against the eventual d5 push, which is what black is trying to prepare. But I play a6 to try to prepare kicking the bishop around and gaining queenside space. He plays d4. I take. He takes. I play knight e7. I didn't want to play knight f6 just because I figured he could do something like take here. Now I have this like huge hole on d6. So I played knight e7. And then he just plays h4. And I'm like, oh, this is what you're trying to do? And I couldn't tell if there was really an attack here or not. But just to be safe, I just took on d4 first because I figured after queen takes, I'll get tempo with playing knight c6. And then after he moved his queen to e3, I said, okay, so you are trying to create some kind of kingside attack, because I imagine your plan in the future is going to be like queen g3, bishop h6, and then if I castle here, I have to do this. And it's like, okay, sure. But I started with b5 just to move his bishop again. Bishop e7. Secret attack is trying to hit this pawn here, but really I'm just like getting ready to try to defend this position. I didn't want to commit to g6 right away just because this, I mean, not with the queen, but something like this. Well, you'd have to, well, basically I figured he was going to try to rearrange his queen, right, and try to trade this off, and he's already got h4 in. And I didn't want to go into something like this, so going back here, I just started with bishop e7, trying to win the h4 pawn. Plays queen g3. I played bishop f6, and he plays bishop g5. I think I'm fine with a bishop trade here. My queen lands on f6. I'm going to get castled, and my pieces should be decently close enough and well equipped to defend any attack he has, because it's really just pawns after we trade bishops. This bishop here is not really doing anything. This knight needs like 3 turns to be a big problem. So I figured I had time, and I just castled. He long castles, which is fine. And then I try to play b4, kicking his knight around, which in hindsight is probably not even as good of a move as I want it to be, because his knight should be rerouting this way anyway. So it's like I just gave him an extra reason to do so. but he plays e5 instead. And when I saw e5, I thought I could take, but then my queen was exposed, right? So take, but I saw, wait, I can take his queen, and maybe in the future, what I had seen vaguely is that I have a check on f4 to try to gain a tempo back, and like maybe something will happen there. So I did go for bishop takes e5. Now the computer says f4 is the move, but I figured I had, well, I mean, I didn't really figure much of anything, but I'm wondering why this doesn't work. Knight e4. Yeah, I didn't see f4. I just saw this take, which is what he played in the game. Bishop takes d8. I take his queen, so we're even. But then he plays knight e4, which, I mean, clearly he didn't see this check here. That gets my bishop out of the way and, I mean, gives me time to win his bishop. A better move here, I figured he might just play like fg3 or something. Or he'll like run his bishop away, so I'd play like here. And the game kind of just goes on, but yeah, so he missed all of that. And so after knight e4, I give him a check, and then I just won his bishop. And from here, it's kind of like slow conversion yet again. I am up a bishop and a pawn. So, you know, once I can like get my pieces into the game, specifically this bishop here, things should be pretty fine. h5, again, there's not really a threat here. g4, g5 is too slow. I have time to react to that, so I'll be all right. I try to trade off his light squared bishop, which I do. He takes with the a pawn. And here I just attack his knight, trying to develop my bishop, which hasn't done anything all game. Knight d6 is a good move. It does try to attack my bishop here, so I defend it with c6, bishop c6, but totally forgot about the b4 pawn there. Either way, I'm still up a piece, so I'm not too concerned about losing a pawn. I play g6 just to give my bishop an escape square, and you know, this trade is pretty fine. Like, this open file is not as strong as it may seem. Also because I'm controlling the h1 square, so it's hard for this rook to really get in. He'd probably have to do like this. He plays rook f4. He's probably eyeing the f7 pawn being weak, but my bishop is covering that square, so I just took that. a5, knight g1, or sorry, rook g1, a4. I'm trying to cause problems on his king by pushing my flank pawn, but he kind of declines all of the nonsense and plays b4 himself. Bishop d5. I don't remember exactly why I wanted to play bishop d5, but I did. He's trying to push his pawns. I mean, at this point, he doesn't really have much of an attack. This is kind of a cute tactic where I can't actually take his rook. I mean, I can't take his knight because I'm pinned, but I don't really care, to be honest. I'm up a full rook, so I should be able to convert this position. Rook e8. Attacks my bishop with rook d1. Just move it back. We're all good. Yeah, I mean, this is just conversion. Knight d6, rook b8, c3, a3, trying to undermine, partially to undermine this pawn structure, but also just to push the pass pawn. Yeah, b3, I can just take. And he still has the problems of this a pawn potentially promoting. He plays rook h1, and I'm just like, that's fine. I'll just move my bishop back. There's no real attack here, right? He just doesn't have enough pieces to really do much of anything here. So as we just play through the moves, I'm basically trying to consolidate and find the win. Around here, he lines up his knight and rook, so I figured, okay, well, let me just pin that. Apparently I had mate in 4 here. I didn't see mate in 4. Oh well. Bishop f5, knight c5, and then I took his rook, and he resigned here. He may have ran out of time as well, but yeah, I mean, this position is pretty hopeless. 2 rooks versus a knight, pawn on the second rank. Like, what is there to do here, right? So overall, a decent game. This kingside attack, I wasn't afraid, I would say. I was a little apprehensive because I couldn't see how exactly it would work. But it turns out it didn't really work as well as it didn't work as well as I thought it would have. And then he kind of missed the tactic here where I had bishop f4 check, gaining just that one extra move to win his bishop instead of making it an even trade. So just a small little tactic that kind of ended it. Okay, going into the fifth game, I finally have the white pieces now, and I'm playing against Jackson again, so best of two in a weird way. We're practicing our d4, so d4, knight f6, knight f3, d5, and we get into a Catalan position where we do have the bishop on f4, and I know in these kinds of positions, well, knight d2 is actually a blunder already on move 5, because knight b4 is going to win this pawn. Oops. But he didn't see it, and he just played e6, so lucky me. So yeah, c4, bishop b4, queen b3. I know you want to try to pressure this b7 pawn, but as you'll see here, I never get the chance to do it, and I just don't really remember why that never happened. a4, I played a5 just to stop this pawn from pushing. Maybe I should have considered a3, but then I saw a4, and I didn't really like where this is going. I also don't have the normal queen c2 square because of this bishop here, so yeah, things would have been a little annoying here. I probably would have to play like queen d1 or something. And I just didn't like that, so that's why I played a4. dc4, queen c4, and then he offers a queen trade. I was kind of surprised that he offered a queen trade so early. Maybe he just wanted to like equalize and make a draw or something, but so we trade queens. I castle, he castles, and here I'm trying to put my knight into his position, but he's smartly blocks it with b6. And here is where the floundering begins, where I just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm basically just trading off pieces randomly and not gaining a positional edge. So, you know, you can see his knights are getting into my position, but I don't really have much to show for in mine, so things are clearly not going well, and I just didn't really understand why or like where I went wrong in this position here. So here he wants my f7 pawn, which I really didn't think this kind of construction would happen, but here we are, right, with these knights connected like that. I do trade him off and get out of this potential discovered attack here. And yeah, from here, this is kind of like basically shuffling. I mean, 95 is a good outpost, but you know, it's not terrible. It's not as strong as I think it is, to put it simply. Yeah, so here he trades off my bishop, and I try to double up my rooks, but apparently I'm already losing because of c takes d4. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like, it's so hard for me to point out where exactly I went wrong, if it's, especially if it's not like a tactic. It's like, where did I go wrong here? Who knows? But yeah, he plays f6. He's kicking my knight around. I end up coming back to e5 anyway, so yeah, funny stuff. I'm gonna skip forward through some of these moves here. I did have a little fork right around here just to win another pawn, and I thought I was doing well here because the pawn count is roughly equal. Well, now it's going to be equal, but I guess this past e pawn is like the big problem in my position. So we play some more moves, like pieces are kind of just moving around. I gave him this check. Oh, split. So yeah, here you can see I'm just like jumping my knight around. I'm trying to find ways to like win his pawns and like maybe just get into an endgame where I'm okay. But yeah, this was like kind of a cute move that doesn't actually work, just because his king is pinned right now. And you can see he's trying to win my pawns. I trade off his knight. And amazingly enough, it's -3. All right, it's 5 pawns to 5 pawns, but he's going to win this one. This is decently protected, but I guess he could also try to win this pawn as well, so maybe it is that bad. Rook b4, rook a1, and here I'm just trying to find counterplay while not losing all of my pawns at the same time. But as you'll see here, you know, we're playing a bunch of moves, and what happens in the end is that he just runs out of time. Which is a little unfortunate. He definitely had a better position because of this past E pawn, and he could definitely get a past F pawn too with like G5 F4. But yeah, just time was the enemy here, so I kind of got bailed out again, thanks to the clock. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? We all signed up for 10-0, so here we are. Time is just going to be a factor. The game against Wayne, it worked against me. The game here works for me, which I didn't think it was too bad, this position, but it's probably that bad now that I consider like this pawn push and the pawns rolling down the board here. Last game of the night before eating food and having that chess session. I'm finally playing Anthony again. We didn't get to play on Tuesday, so I was kind of looking forward to it. I mentioned on either Tuesday or a week ago, I was thinking about learning a new line against the French, which is what he plays against e4. And this morning, before going into the chess club, I did look at the Tarrasch variation of the French. I watched like a 20-minute video and was just like, all right, I'll wing it. So as I sat down to play this game, I was like, do I really want to go into this? Or do I want to just practice my d4? I wasn't really sure, but what I did end up deciding to do is playing into the Tarrasch French. So e4, e6, d4, d5, knight d2. And the whole point of the Tarrasch here is you're not blocking the c3 square with the knight, which is where it usually goes, or you can just push e5. But this move, it protects the e4 pawn and also leaves room for the c pawn to move to c3. Right, so you know, bishop b4, c3, or like maybe a later queen h6 or whatever. Against like c5, you have c3 as well to kind of defend and maintain a center pawn if he decides to trade. So c3, or knight d2 allowing c3 is, well, that's the whole point of knight d2, to allow c3 to still be played. He plays this like exchange Tarrasch line, for lack of a better word. And then he plays knight f6, to which I take, and he takes back with the queen. So I remember specifically we talked about this position the last time we met, or the last time, I don't remember. We talked about this position, and we looked at the line that we played here, knight f3, bishop d6. I don't know if we talked about bishop d6, but we did mention this move here, bishop g5, because your queen can't retreat this way, obviously, because you're still being attacked. So we looked at it like, well, the queen's not getting trapped because you still have queen f5 here, but this doesn't seem right. Like, this seems like a lot of queen maneuvering for not much benefit. As you'll see, this is what he played in the game. After I played bishop d3 to hit the queen, he plays queen a5 check, and then here we see one of the reasons that knight d2 is good. You get to play c3, which, you know, does block the check, and now it also stops any bishop b4 nonsense as well. So again, this is the whole point of the Tarrasch. He castles. I play bishop d2, and then he plays bishop d7, and I remember in this moment in the game, I was looking at c4, and I thought he had to play queen b6. But it turns out that, or maybe not queen b6, maybe queen a6. But it turns out that he actually could have just went over here to h5, and yeah, I mean, it's +1. I can castle and everything. Development kind of sucks, but I didn't see a kingside attack here, so I wasn't really sure what to do if I went into this. But yeah, so after bishop d2, he plays bishop d7, and I look at this position for a while, and unfortunately, I didn't calculate that it works. I just decided to go into it after some thought. And I tried to go for a Greek gift. So bishop takes h7. The idea is that after king takes knight g5. Yeah, so this doesn't actually work. And the reason I thought it worked was because the last time I tried doing this Greek gift, it was against Jack. Not Jackson, but Jack, who I know he played the Scandinavian against me as black, but yeah, so I remember analyzing that game, and apparently king g6 is surviving, and it still is here. But king g8 is actually better in this position. And I remember in the game against Jack, king g8 was losing in a similar vein. So that's why I went for it again. I thought I would be like in a really good position here after I played queen h5, which is what I did. But it turns out the main difference is that this queen is still here on a5, and he can play what he played in the game to stop this mate here. Excuse me, which is queen f5. So at this point, I was like, man, maybe I should have played c4 earlier in the game to prevent this. But his queen would have been on h5, so it would have been different, which I didn't realize until I analyzed the game. Here, I'm desperately trying to continue with this attack. You can see it's already -4, so my piece sacrifice was in vain, and it didn't actually do anything. I thought it did, and I played under the assumption that it was good, but you can see here, computer says, no, this is absolutely garbage. But, you know, we play on. I'm not just going to resign here. I also thought I was still okay. I mean, I knew I was worse. I had a feeling I was worse, but I was like just trying to finagle an attack just because that's kind of like what the position is calling for. Like, you need to find some way to actually just get an attack going and like win material back. So I continue with queen h4 because I'm definitely not quite trading queens here. He adds pressure to my knight with bishop e7. I castle just so that I can get my king out of the center. Maybe my rook that's now here can participate in something that might happen here. But yeah, knight c6, f4 to continue to overprotect the knight here. Bishop takes, pawn takes. Again, I'm not taking with the queen because I'm not trying to trade queens. He plays f6, which is fine, right? You are kind of getting space for your king. Maybe the king needs to like run away here. I take on passant. He takes with the queen, which also attacks my queen. And I'm definitely, like I've been saying for the last minute, I'm not trading queens, so I play queen g3. Rook c8. I didn't really know what he was trying to do with rook c8. Oh, well, I guess it was protect the pawn here. But honestly, I would have tried to play more actively as black. Like, you're already up a piece, and me taking this pawn probably is not all that great. I continue h4. He tries to queen trade again with queen f3, but I decline with queen e1. Knight e7. I guess he was trying to reroute his knight here for whatever reason. But I continue with h5, just desperately trying to attack. Bishop c6. So I saw this move when he... Well, I mean, obviously I saw the move when he played it, but... So when he played it, I was like, okay, well, this is just pointing at my rook, but that's kind of fine for me. I thought, like, I didn't think he was going to take my rook. So I just kind of continued with h6 to continue to pressure, the few defensive pieces around his king still. And then he did take my rook. And this is better for white now if I find the right move, which is queen e6 check, because it allows the rook to capture instead of the queen, which is obviously good for me. And this would have won my material back, basically. It would have been queen and bishop versus 2 rooks and a knight, which is roughly equal in material, but maybe my my deep h-pawn could cause a lot of problems here. But I didn't see queen takes e6. I saw queen e5, thinking I need to attack, I need to checkmate, right? There's a checkmate threat here. Yeah, but after I played this move, I realized that this is not the way to go, because he has queen takes d1, king takes d1, rook f7, and I mean, like, what am I to do here, right? Like, there's no attack. He has 2 rooks for his queen, so he's kind of fine with that. He's basically up the piece that I sacrificed at the very beginning. I no longer have an attack, right? And I mean, the piece sacrifice was in vain, instead of the cliche term of was not in vain or whatever. So going back to the position here, yeah, you just like, I tried to go for mate in 1, and I'm like, okay, well, this doesn't work. And then he played knight g6. And I played queen takes g7. I was like, oh. Okay. Sure. So those are all of the games today. What I've learned this week, or after today's session, is that these wins are like mildly fraudulent. I've won on time in worse positions, and this has happened many times over the last few weeks. I'll win lost positions due to time, and then I'm sometimes just randomly worse despite the material being equal, mainly because I'm not seeing like tactical moves to like force a material advantage for my opponent. But also a common theme in when I've been playing the Catalan is like sometimes I'll get like a plus 0.7 position, and then I make a seemingly natural move, and now suddenly it's like minus 0.5. So, I really got to figure out where I'm going wrong with those games. But I mean, I would say past that, overall, I'm starting to get comfortable with the openings that I am learning. It's just I gotta just iron out the kinks, and then yeah, I mean, my tactical vision is back to about where it should be for like what I consider to be good. But yeah, past that, I just got to figure out why I'm just like randomly worse in the opening when I try to play the Catalan, or at least lose my advantage. But yeah, those were the games. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you Tuesday, or maybe Wednesday morning. Who knows?